I didn't even have time to scream before the world tilted and I hit the cold, muddy water. For a moment, the shock of it stole my breath. Then the pain in my knee screamed louder than any voice I could manage. I clawed at the slick sides of the ditch, my fingers sliding on the wet earth as icy water soaked through my clothes. Above me, Ryan stood on the road, his silhouette framed by the fading glow of sunset. My husband, the man I trusted more than anyone else in this world, stood with his arms folded and a smile on his face. You really thought I'd spend my life tied to you? That I'd let you keep that beach house? His voice sliced through the trees like a knife. Thanks for signing it over, Olivia. You just saved me a fortune. For a moment, I couldn't process what he said. My own signature on the deed to my grandparents' beach house, the only piece of family I had left. I trusted him when he said it was just for the renovation loan, that we needed it in his name temporarily because he had better credit. I believed every word, because that's what you do when you love someone. But looking up at him now, seeing that cold, smug expression, I realized I didn't even know this man anymore. Ryan, why? My voice cracked, more from betrayal than pain. Why? He laughed, short and cruel. Because you're naive. Because you thought marriage meant something. Newsflash, Olivia, it doesn't. He stepped closer to the edge and crouched, just enough for me to see the contempt in his eyes. Stay here a while. Maybe think about how stupid you've been. Then he stood, brushed invisible dust from his jacket, and turned away. I heard his footsteps crunch on the gravel, followed by the distant rumble of the engine as his car roared to life and disappeared into the night. I was alone, in the middle of nowhere. Cold, wet, and shaking, not just from fear, but from the realization that my life had just been torn apart by the person I loved. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My body felt like it had shut down, my hands trembling too much to grip the edge of the ditch. Then anger surged through me, raw, hot, and fierce. I pressed my palms into the mud, digging my nails in until I found enough leverage to drag myself upward. My knee screamed in protest, a sharp ache radiating up my thigh. But I didn't stop. Inch by inch, I pulled myself out, rolling onto the side of the road with a sob that wasn't just pain. It was heartbreak. Lying there under the bruised purple sky, I thought about the beach house. My grandparents' laughter echoing through its halls. The summers I'd spent there as a child, collecting seashells with my grandmother. I had signed it away to a man who had just left me for dead in a ditch. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them back. Crying wouldn't save me. My phone. I reached into my pocket, but it was dead. A black screen stared back at me. Of course it was. Ryan had made sure I was isolated. My hands curled into fists as I forced myself to stand, favoring my injured knee. I had two choices: stay here and risk hypothermia, or find help before the night completely swallowed me. I chose to walk, one step, then another, along that desolate road lined with trees whispering in the wind. Each movement hurt, but every step I took was proof I wasn't as broken as Ryan wanted me to be. I whispered into the dark, just to hear my own voice. You won't destroy me. Not like this. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of darkness, broken only by patches of moonlight slipping through the trees. My knee throbbed with every step, sharp and insistent, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The sound of my breathing filled the night, ragged and uneven, while the echo of Ryan's words kept looping in my head. Thanks for signing it over, Olivia. You just saved me a fortune. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse on the side of the road and give up. But something inside me refused. Maybe it was anger. Maybe just the simple will to survive. But I kept moving. Somewhere ahead, a faint light glimmered through the trees. I squinted, focusing past the blur of tears. A porch light, someone's home. Relief rushed over me, so sudden and powerful it nearly buckled my legs. I limped toward it, one hand on the trees for balance. By the time I reached the wooden gate, I was trembling so hard I could barely stand. I I hesitated for a second, unsure who might answer at this hour, then raised my fist and knocked on the weathered door. It creaked open almost immediately, and warm light spilled across the porch. A woman stood there, her gray hair tucked under a knitted cap, her eyes narrowing with concern as she looked me over. "Oh dear." "What on earth happened to you?" she asked, her voice firm but kind. I just need help," I stammered, shivering in my soaked clothes. "My phone's dead. My knee—" She didn't let me finish. "Come in, child. Come in right now." Inside, her home smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. She guided me to a chair, brought me a towel, and placed a steaming mug of tea in front of me before I could even protest. "I'm Helen Moore," she said gently, crouching to check my knee. "Looks like you took quite a fall." "You could say that," I whispered, staring into the tea, watching the steam swirl like ghosts of memories I didn't want to face. Helen looked up at me, her brow furrowed. This wasn't an accident, was it? Something in her voice, steady, knowing, safe, broke through the wall I'd been holding up. I told her everything. The ditch, Ryan's betrayal, the beach house, my signature on the deed I thought was just a formality. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking again, but not from the cold this time. Helen reached across the table and took my hand. "You're safe here tonight, sweetheart. Tomorrow we'll go to the police and figure this out properly. You don't have to face this alone." Her words sank into me like warm sunlight on frozen skin. For the first time since Ryan pushed me into that ditch, I felt something besides fear. I felt hope. She led me to a small guest room with a neatly made bed and a handmade quilt that smelled of detergent and lavender. I sank into it, clutching the edges like they could keep me anchored to reality. My clothes were still damp, clinging, cold to my skin, but the warmth of this place seeped into me anyway. Warmth I hadn't even realized I'd been missing for so long. Helen came back with a first aid kit and knelt in front of me. "This will sting a bit," she said softly as she cleaned the gash on my knee. I flinched but stayed quiet, letting her work in silence. For a moment, I felt like a child again, like someone finally cared enough to patch the pieces Ryan had broken. When she finished, she placed a hand on my shoulder. "Get some rest, Olivia. You're safe here. Tomorrow we'll deal with everything else, one step at a time." Safe. It was such a simple word, but it hit me so hard, I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. She left quietly, pulling the door until only a sliver of light cut across the room. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the old heater and the distant rustle of trees outside. The pain in my knee pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, but exhaustion finally pulled me under. For the first time since Ryan's betrayal, I slept without the weight of fear crushing me, because someone, a stranger, had shown me kindness when I needed it most. Tomorrow would bring questions, police reports, and the brutal truth of what Ryan had done. But tonight, I was safe. And that was enough. I woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clinking of dishes. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The ditch, Ryan's cold voice, Helen's kindness. I sat up slowly, feeling the stiffness in my knee. It hurt, but it was manageable. Today, I told myself, things would begin to change. Helen greeted me at the kitchen table with a warm smile and a plate of toast. "Eat up. You'll need the energy. We've got things to do today." "Thank you for everything," I said quietly. She waved me off. "We take care of each other out here. Now finish your coffee. We're going to the police." The drive to the small town station was quiet, broken only by the hum of the old truck and the pounding of my heart. The building was modest, almost unremarkable, but stepping inside felt like crossing into another world. I had never filed a police report before. I never thought I'd be that woman, the one needing protection from her own husband. At the front desk, a young officer looked up and gave a polite nod. "How can we help you today?" My voice trembled, at first, but Helen's steady presence beside me gave me strength. "I need to report an assault," I said. My husband pushed me into a ditch last night, and he tricked me into signing over my family's house. The officer's expression changed. He gestured for me to sit. Let's take it one step at a time. It felt strange saying it all, out loud again, every detail, every painful truth about how I had trusted him. By the end, my throat was dry, and my hands hurt from gripping the chair too tightly. The officer typed everything into his system, then looked at me seriously. We'll document this and open an investigation for the assault. As for the house, that's a civil matter, but it sounds like fraud might be involved. You'll need a good lawyer. Helen didn't hesitate. We know someone. My niece used him for a property case last year. He's good. That's how I ended up later that day sitting in a cozy office full of books, across from David Samuels, a tall man in his 40s with sharp eyes but a kind smile. I've heard the basics, he said, adjusting his glasses. But I want to hear everything from you. So I told him again. How Ryan convinced me to transfer the title to get a renovation loan. How I trusted him. How he threw me out after it was done. David listened carefully, tapping his pen. This sounds like fraud and coercion. We can fight this. It won't be easy, but you have a strong case, especially with the assault involved. We'll file to reverse the title transfer and pursue charges if we can. You'll also need a safe place to stay in the meantime. Helen leaned in. She can stay with me until she finds somewhere else. My throat tightened again. I don't even know how to thank you both. David smiled gently. Start by promising you won't give up. Men like Ryan count on silence. We're not giving him that. For the first time since the ditch, I felt a little in control again. It was fragile, but it was real. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about taking my life back. I thought I'd get a few days to breathe and plan my next steps. I was wrong. It happened on the second evening after I filed the report. I had just finished dinner with Helen and was about to shower when I heard it. Tires on gravel, followed by slow, heavy steps on the porch. Helen froze. Her hand gripped my arm. Stay here, she whispered, heading to the door. I peeked through the small window. It was Ryan. His car was parked crooked in the driveway, and he stood there like he owned the place, wearing the same smug look I saw when he pushed me into the ditch. My stomach tightened. My pulse pounded in my ears. Helen opened the door slightly and spoke through the gap. You need to leave. Ryan tilted his head, spotting me over her shoulder. Olivia, come on, we need to talk. His voice was soft, almost kind. But I knew that tone. It always started sweet, then turned sharp. I have nothing to say to you, I said, my hands shaking. He smirked. You went to the police? You really think they'll help you? You signed the house over, Olivia. It's mine now. And you? You're just making a fool of yourself. Helen stepped forward, standing between us. Her voice was strong. You heard her. Leave, or I'm calling the sheriff. Ryan's fake charm dropped. His eyes turned cold. You think this is over? You'll regret this. His threat felt real, like smoke in the air, but I stood firm. No, Ryan. My only mistake was trusting you. For a second, his face twisted with pure anger. Then he stepped back and raised his hands like he didn't care. Fine, have it your way, but don't say I didn't warn you. He stormed back to his car, slammed the door, and sped off, gravel flying behind him. Helen quickly locked the door, twice. We're calling the police again, she said, already dialing. When the deputy arrived, I gave another statement. My voice was shaky, but I got through it. They said they'd file a record of his visit and look into getting an emergency protective order. The words protective order gave me some comfort. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. That night, lying on Helen's couch, I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything he'd said. He didn't look at me like a wife. He looked at me like an enemy. A chill ran through me. But this time, I wasn't crying. I wasn't broken. Yes, I was afraid. But underneath it was something new. A fire. A quiet, stubborn strength. Ryan thought he could scare me into silence, but he had no idea who I was becoming now. 2 days later, Just when I thought things might calm down, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Olivia? It's Mark Daniels. You don't know me well, but I used to work with Ryan. I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you calling me? He paused, then exhaled. Because I think you're in danger, and because I can't stay quiet anymore. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop in town. I picked a seat by the window where I could see everything. My nerves were on edge. When Mark walked in, he looked nervous, slightly hunched, his eyes scanning the room. He sat across from me, holding his coffee tightly. I need you to understand something, he said. Ryan's not just angry. This was his plan from the beginning. He wanted to marry someone with assets, a house, inheritance, something stable. Then he met you. My chest tightened. You mean, he married me just to take the house? Mark nodded, guilt on his face. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was just talking big. But after you got married, he bragged about how easy it would be to get you to sign everything. And after you did, he said, Mark swallowed hard. He said he'd deal with you if you fought back. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Deal with me? What does that mean? Mark looked around nervously, then leaned closer. He said if you made it hard, you'd end up in the hospital, that you'd learn your place. For a second, the room spun. The man I had loved wasn't just selfish. He was dangerous. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, voice low. Mark stared at his coffee. Because it's gone too far, and you deserve to know the truth. I'll testify if I need to. I should have spoken up earlier, but I can't let him hurt you. My heart pounded. You know what this means, right? If you testify, he'll come after you too. Mark gave a sad laugh. He probably will. But I'd rather deal with his anger than live knowing I let him destroy you. We sat in silence. I reached across the table and gently held his shaking hands. Thank you. You don't know how much this means. He nodded. His eyes were glassy. Just be careful. He's not done. He wants that house sold fast. He's already talking to buyers. You need to act before it's too late. I left the coffee shop with my heart racing. Fear and determination tangled inside me. Ryan didn't just want to scare me. He had a plan. A plan that never included me. But now I wasn't alone. For the first time, someone besides Helen and my lawyer believed me and was ready to stand with me. Whatever Ryan was planning, I would be ready. I wouldn't let him win. The next morning, my lawyer called. His voice was calm but tight with tension. Olivia, I just got word. Ryan is actively listing the beach house. He's meeting a potential buyer today. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. That house, my grandparents' house. Where? I asked, my voice sharper than I expected. Cannon Beach. I can file for an emergency order, but it might not go through fast enough to stop the sale. If you want to stop him, we need to act now. Minutes later, I was in Helen's old truck, a bag over my shoulder, adrenaline burning through my chest like fire. Helen insisted on coming with me. No way you're facing him alone, she said, gripping the steering wheel with the calm strength of someone who's been through storms and survived. The drive felt endless, even though the miles passed in a blur of trees and coastline. My mind kept flashing back to summers in that house, seashells lined on the windowsill, my grandfather's laugh echoing like the tide. The thought of strangers walking through it, talking about countertops and flipping it for profit, made my stomach twist. When we got there, Ryan's car was already in the driveway. A man and woman stood on the porch looking around like tourists. Ryan was with them, smiling like everything was perfectly normal. I didn't even think. I just marched up the gravel path and called out, Ryan. He turned, surprised at first. Then his face tightened. What are you doing here? This is my house, you're not selling it. He laughed, cold and fake. Your house? Olivia, you gave it to me, remember? That's what the papers were for. Those papers were fraud, and you know it, I said, my voice shaking but steady. I've already filed a case. The court knows everything. If you sell this house, you'll be breaking the law. The couple looked uncomfortable. Ryan forced a smile and said to them, "Give me a minute," then turned back to me. His voice dropped low. "You really want to do this here? In front of strangers? You're embarrassing yourself again." "I don't care who's watching," I said, my hands clenched at my sides. "You tricked me. You pushed me. I'm done being quiet." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe fear, but he covered it quickly. "You think a little police report will save you? You think a judge will believe you? You're weak, Olivia. You always were." "Not anymore," I said quietly. "I have witnesses now. You're not touching this house again." Before he could answer, Helen stepped up beside me. "You heard her. This ends now." The buyers quickly got in their car and drove off. Ryan cursed under his breath and glared at me. "You think this is over? You just cost me money, Olivia. You'll pay for this." My hands were shaking, but I stood tall. "No, Ryan. This time you're the one who's going to pay." We left before things got worse, but the fear still sat heavy in my chest. Later, when my lawyer called to say the emergency injunction had been granted, officially blocking any sale, I felt my first real victory. Ryan didn't win, and I wasn't done yet. The emergency injunction felt like a lifeline, but Ryan's threat still echoed in my head. He hated losing, and I knew this wasn't over. That night, Helen's porch light flickered as a truck rolled slowly past her property, twice. I saw the driver through the window. My stomach dropped. Ryan. Helen called the sheriff, but by the time they arrived, the truck was gone. "Unless he steps on your property or makes direct contact," the deputy said, "there's not much we can do, but we'll document it. You might want to file for a protective order." It felt like building a wall out of paper, flimsy and weak, but I filed anyway, gripping the paperwork like armor. Even then, the anxiety clung to me. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every car I didn't recognize made my heart pound. One night, unable to sleep, I sat at Helen's kitchen table staring into my tea. Helen joined me, her face full of concern. "You can't let him live in your head like this," she said gently. "You're stronger than you think. And you're not alone." Her words stayed with me the next day when she took me to a local support group for women who had survived abusive relationships. It was in a church basement, just a circle of chairs. But the moment I walked in, I felt strangely safe. One woman, Clara, smiled at me and scooted over to make room. "First time?" she whispered. I nodded. "Mine too, once. You'll get through this." People shared stories, gave encouragement. Nothing fancy, but it was powerful. Listening to women talk about reclaiming their lives, their homes, their peace, I felt something shift inside me. For so long, I had defined myself by what Ryan took: my house, my trust, my safety. But maybe I could start defining myself by what I was taking back. After the meeting, Clara slipped a small card into my hand. "That's our number. Call anytime, day or night." I tucked it into my wallet like it was a key to something I hadn't known I needed. Back at Helen's, I opened my laptop. For the first time since this nightmare began, I thought about the future. Not just surviving court, but life after. I applied for a part-time teaching job at the community center. I even started sketching ideas for restoring the beach house once it was legally mine again. Ryan had taken so much, but not everything. Not yet. Not ever again. When Helen peeked in and saw me typing, she smiled. "That's more like it," she said softly. "That's you, taking your life back." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Really smiled. Maybe, just maybe, I could start over. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished wood, a mix that made my nerves worse. I sat next to David, my lawyer, clutching a folder full of evidence. Across the room, Ryan leaned back in his chair like this was just lunch, not a hearing about fraud and assault. He looked at me and smirked, that same smirk that used to charm me. Now it made my stomach turn. David leaned over and whispered, "Remember, today isn't about winning the whole case. It's just about showing the judge the deed transfer was fraud and why it should go to trial. Just tell the truth. I'll do the rest. I nodded, gripping the folder tighter. The hearing started. Ryan's lawyer spoke first. Smooth suit, smoother. Lies. He painted Ryan as a loving husband managing finances for their future. He said the transfer was mutual. That I misunderstood everything. My pulse rose, but David's hand on my arm kept me steady. Then David stood. Calm and focused, he explained everything. My testimony, the sketchy timing of the deed transfer, Ryan trying to sell the house, and Mark Daniels' statement about Ryan's plan from the start. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, swore to tell the truth. My palms were sweaty. Mrs. Grant? The judge asked, can you explain why you believe the house transfer wasn't voluntary? My voice trembled at first, but I got stronger with every word. I told them everything, how Ryan said it was. Just temporary, how I trusted him, how he ended that trust by throwing me into a ditch. At one point, Ryan smirked, like it was funny. That smirk lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. I loved him, I said, looking right at him. I trusted him, and he used that trust to steal the only piece of family I had left. That house isn't just property. It's my grandparents' legacy, and I will fight to protect it. For the first time, Ryan's expression changed. Just a little. After a short break, the judge returned with a ruling. The property transfer would be frozen until the case was resolved. Ryan couldn't sell or change anything about the house. It wasn't the final win, but it was a win. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath. David gave me a gentle pat on the shoulder. You did well today. Really well. Helen hugged me. Tight. For the first time, I felt like maybe I could really win this. You see? You're stronger than you think. Ryan walked past us then, close enough for me to hear him mutter, "This isn't over, Olivia." I looked him in the eyes, calm and steady. You're right. It's not. But this time, you're the one who should be scared. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, and that gave me a kind of strength I hadn't felt in years. The morning after the hearing, I woke up without the heavy weight I had grown used to. The fear wasn't completely gone, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had choices again. I spent the day on the phone with the community center, confirming my new part-time teaching job. It didn't pay much, but it was mine, earned on my own terms, and somehow that meant more than I expected. In the afternoons, I started walking to the beach near Helen's house. The air smelled like salt and pine, and each wave crashing on the shore felt like it was taking a piece of my anger with it. I'd sit with a notebook, sketching out ideas to fix up my grandparents' house once the court made it officially mine. Again. Sanding old floors, painting faded shutters, planting a little garden by the fence. I could picture it all. One evening, Helen joined me on the porch with 2 mugs of tea. "You're different now," she said, watching me closely. "There's light in your eyes again." I smiled softly. It feels like I'm finally breathing, not just surviving, actually living. A big part of that was the people around me, the support. Group had become a lifeline. These were women who knew what betrayal felt like, and how hard starting over could be. Clara, the woman I met on my first day, had become a close friend. She helped me celebrate the little victories, cooking, dinner, painting my nails again, laughing without guilt. Even Mark, the witness who came forward, checked in now and then. He'd stop by after work, a little awkward, but always kind. One afternoon, he brought a tray of purple and yellow flowers. "For your new garden," he said. "You know, once this is all behind you." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in ages, and promised to plant them. Little by little, I stopped feeling like a victim. I started feeling like myself again, maybe even a stronger version of me. The Olivia who blindly signed over her home was gone. This Olivia knew her worth. She had boundaries, and she was never going back. One night, I stood in front of the beach house, still locked up by the court, but already mine in spirit, and whispered to the wind, "You tried to break me, Ryan, but I'm still here." This wasn't about revenge. anymore. It was about taking my life back. I could see it clearly. Warm lights shining through the windows, laughter on the porch, a home filled with real love, not manipulation. And for the first time, I believed it could happen. A month after the hearing. Winter had started to fade, and with it, the heavy feeling in my chest. The house was still under legal hold, but something inside me had shifted. I no longer felt stuck. I could finally imagine what came next. That morning, Mark stopped by with a toolbox. "Thought we could at least clean up the porch," he said, nodding. "At the house." His voice was careful, like he wasn't sure how much of a place he had in this new part of my life. I paused for only a second before saying, "Yeah, let's do it." We worked quietly at first, brushing away salt and sand, fixing loose railings, washing windows until they sparkled in the sunlight. At one point, I noticed him watching me with a small smile. "What?" I asked, pushing my hair back. "You just look different," he said softly. "Happier." And he was right. I was happier. Not because everything was fixed, but because I wasn't waiting for anyone else to fix me. Later that day, Helen arrived carrying a pot of golden chrysanthemums. "For your porch," she said, setting them down. "A fresh start deserves something beautiful." I touched the petals gently, my throat tight with emotion. "Thank you. For everything." She smiled, warm and full of pride. "Just promise me one thing. Don't let this house define you. It's just wood and nails, Olivia. You, your strength, your heart, that's your real home now." Her words stayed with me, and for the first time, I believed them. That evening, we sat on the porch. The ocean stretched out before us, waves calm and steady. Mark handed me a packet of seeds. "Thought maybe you'd want to plant these. Wildflowers. They grow fast. Fill up the empty spaces." I stared at the packet, then smiled. "Empty spaces? Yeah, I've got a few of those." We planted them together, hands in the cool soil, while Helen arranged her flowers on the porch steps. The setting sun bathed everything in gold, and for the first time in a long while, I felt rooted. Not just to this place, but to myself. Ryan's shadow was still somewhere out there, but it didn't scare me anymore. And no matter what happened, in court, I knew I'd already won. I had my voice. I had my life back. I had me. As the first stars appeared in the sky, I whispered to myself like a quiet promise. They tried to take everything from me. But I found something even greater. Myself. Helen smiled knowingly. Mark pressed the last flower into the soil. It was a small, quiet moment. But it felt like the beginning of everything.